Hi, this is Ray from Honey Top Bees. Let's learn today about the parts of the beehive. If you're a beginning beekeeper, you might look at this box and say, okay, what is it all about? Well, you're in the right place today. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end today because I am going to answer some common questions that people have about beehive. I know when I first started in beekeeping, there's so much to learn. There's terminology and there's new equipment and just things you're just not familiar with. So the purpose of this video is to help new and beginning and recent beekeepers to understand all the parts of the beehive and in general what their uses are. Now there's all these nuances that we can have for changing this or doing that in different circumstances. I'm not going to really go into any of that today. This is a beginner's video and the purpose is just to help you to understand all the parts of this hive. First of all, let's talk about what this hive is called. This is called a Langstroth beehive. Now there are other types of beehives that are available on the market other than the Langstroth. For example, there's a hive called a top bar hive. It's designed very differently than this one. And there are other different modular designs that you can buy, including even new things such as 3D printed hives. However, if you're a new beekeeper, I encourage you, start with the tried and true. For over 100 years, this has been the standard beehive that beekeepers have kept. And so for that reason, it's very easy to find equipment and to buy equipment that is designed like this. This is called the Langstroth hive. So what I'd like to do for you today is start at the very bottom and work our way all the way up to the top of the beehive. So let me take this thing apart. Starting at the very bottom, we have a bottom board. And this particular bottom board is called a solid bottom board because it has no holes or vents inside of it. And most beekeeping kits that you get are going to come with a solid bottom board. There's another kind of bottom board called a screen bottom board. And it's exactly like it says. There's a screen on the bottom that the bees walk over to get into the hive. It has a removable tray in the bottom of it that allows for you to pull this out during certain months of the year for two purposes. One of the purposes why you would pull that tray out would be to increase ventilation. And in my area of the country, ventilation is very important. And so pulling this out allows a tremendous amount of ventilation to go through the hive, which helps the bees to keep the hive cooler. The second reason why you might use a screen bottom board with a removable tray inside of it is to reduce varroa mites. That as the bees are in the hive and they're grooming themselves, some of the mites will fall off of the bees and hopefully they will fall through the screen onto the ground. And unlike a solid bottom board, they won't have the opportunity to crawl right back on top of the bees. So there's a couple advantages to the screen bottom board, especially if you live in the South. However, don't stress out over it. This is a no stress video. If your hive kit came with a solid bottom board, it's okay. It'll work just fine. And you don't need to worry about going out and getting a screen bottom board, especially maybe your first year. But down the road, it's something that you just might want to be aware of. I'm going to go ahead and build up the rest of my hive. I'm going to build it on my screen bottom board today. The next piece I'd like to show you is called an entrance reducer. And an entrance reducer does exactly like it's called. It reduces the entrance of the hive in the area that the bees go in and out of the hive. The entrance reducers will typically have two different sizes, a smaller hole which is about 1 inch and a larger hole which is about 4 or 5 inches. And depending on how you turn the entrance reducer will determine how large of a size of a hole that the bees will have to go in and out of the hive. Now in general, an entrance reducer is used during the summer months to help reduce the potential of robbing. Gives a smaller area for the guard bees to be able to defend from other bees coming in and taking and stealing their resources. And also is used often in the winter to reduce ventilation to keep the wind from being able to blow freely inside of the hive, making it more difficult for the cluster to keep warm. Those are a couple of basic uses for the entrance reducer. Your hive kit probably came with an entrance reducer. They can be purchased for just a few dollars, or you really don't even need to actually use this particular piece. You can actually just stick a small piece of wood in front or a little block or something and reduce the entrance manually. That way it will have the same effect. So again, don't worry about it. If you didn't get an entrance reducer, you might want to just use something simple instead of purchasing one. I'm going to go ahead and put our entrance reducer here on the front of the hive on the smallest setting so the bees will only be able to go in this particular corner. Let's move to the next. Next we have what we call our brood box. And this is the area that we give to the queen to be able to lay her brood for the upcoming season. In here, she will lay eggs, which will eventually become baby bees, and the bees will also store resources inside of this bottom box. Now typically, most beekeepers set this up as a deep box. This is a larger size box, a little over 9.5 inches in height. There's a smaller size box, which sometimes beekeepers use for honey, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But in general, this is where you'll start. If you get a package of bees, you'll put them inside of this deep box, and this is all you will use at the beginning. If you get a nucleus of bees, you'll pull out the center 5 frames from the middle of this deep box, and you will go ahead and put your 5 frames that came with your nuke in here in the middle, tighten everything up, and then put your top on, and this is what you will start. When your hive is 80% full, let me try that again. When your bottom box is 80% full, which means that 80% of the frames are covered with bees, that would be when you would add a second box on top and let the bees continue to expand and grow inside of their hive. Inside of your deep box are these little things, which are called bee frames. The frame actually refers to the wooden part that you see here, but these also come in all plastic, including the outside edges. The middle of this is called foundation, and this particular piece is plastic foundation. And by far, right now, plastic is the most common foundation that beekeepers use inside of their hives and inside of their frames. You can get wax foundation if you so choose, or you can even go foundationless by removing this foundation completely from the frame and letting the bees build their own foundation inside of this frame without you giving them anything to start on. However, just know that if you choose to do that, you will find that the bees sometimes are not going to build the comb as straight as you might want, and the comb will start to cross over between the frames, and sometimes it can turn into a little bit of a mess. Not always, but it does happen. So most beekeepers are going to start with plastic foundation. Now, you might want to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have some videos about how to prepare this plastic foundation for use inside of your beehive by waxing it, by covering up the plastic smell. The bees like that, and they'll take to the foundation a lot better if you do that. The last thing I'd like to say about this deep box is my particular hive is an 8-frame hive. That means that there are currently 8 frames inside of this box. There is a larger size called a 10-frame, and 10-frame is actually probably more popular than the 8-frame. But for most backyard beekeepers that are going to keep less than 20 hives, I highly recommend you consider the 8-frame hive because it's a lot lighter to lift and a little bit more convenient to use. It's totally up to you. The bees don't care. The only thing I encourage you to do is if you start with 10-frame, just stay with 10-frame hives. If you start with 8-frame boxes like I use in my apiary, just stay with 8-frame because there's nothing more frustrating than needing to add another super on top of your hive and you don't have the right size box to do it in. The next thing we'll talk about is a queen excluder. Some beekeepers use these, some beekeepers don't use them. And the reason why some don't use them is sometimes if you have a box full of bees on the bottom, the bees are hesitant to come through the queen excluder to anything above it. But I'll tell you what it's for, and you can decide in your own apiary whether you choose to use this or not. A queen excluder does one thing, and that is exclude the queen from an area where you don't want her to be. So that means if my queen is down here at the bottom, and I don't want her to lay eggs any higher than this because I want those to have exclusively honey inside of them, I can put down this queen excluder. The queen bee cannot get through this size hole that is in the excluder, and just for the record, the male bees, the drone bees, cannot get through this either. But the worker bees can. The question is, will they? Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. And so this is what the purpose of the queen excluder is. And again, you'll have to decide in your own apiary whether you choose to use it, but most beehive kits will come with a queen excluder. Let's move up to the next box, which we sometimes refer to as our super. This is, in general, a smaller box. This is a medium super, so you can see while the depth of this is around 9.5 inches, this is a little over 6 inches tall. This reduces the weight of this, and so when you're working your hives and you're having to lift and put these supers on, especially up high, it can be really heavy to lift up. So beekeepers have designed smaller frames like you see here that are not quite as tall as a deep size frame. So these are called mediums. There is a size smaller that is a little bit smaller than this one. So this is called a medium. There's one more smaller called a shallow, but it's rarely used. A lot of beekeeping places do not even sell it. It's just not that popular because it's not that much different than the medium in size. Typically, this box is used for honey. And so you will want your bees to draw this out. And if you have a queen excluder, keeps the queen from laying any eggs up here, and the bees will fill this full of honey. You can extract this honey and enjoy the bountiful harvest of your beekeeping. You may have noticed that down in the deep box, all the foundation was black. But up here, the plastic foundation is yellow. The reason for that is the foundation down in the bottom, we want to be able to see the eggs that the queen is laying. It's much easier, trust me, to be able to see the eggs against the black foundation. Sometimes beekeepers like to use yellow plastic foundation for their honey supers so that they know that those are being just used for honey and not being used for any brood laying. The bees don't care whether it's black or whether it's yellow. It's solely for your use. And so there's really no difference. The bees will do the same thing that bees do on the black foundation as the yellow foundation. It doesn't make any difference to them. It's only there to help the beekeeper, primarily to see the eggs on the black, and then to know that this is maybe used primarily for honey. But it doesn't really matter. Let's move up to the next piece on your beehive, which is called the inner cover. The inner cover goes on top of your super, whether you have one box or whether you have two boxes. And so, for example, if I was just starting this beehive, I wouldn't be adding the super until my bottom box is 80% full. I also would not have any use for the queen excluder if I was just starting this beehive. And so I would put my nuke or my package bees in here. I would put my inner cover on top of this. And what this does is a couple of things. Number one is it creates a little bit of space between the top of these frames and the top cover for the bees to be able to work and also to create ventilation inside of the hive. Some of these inner covers, although this one in particular does not have it, will have a notch here in the front, which provides two things. It provides a second entrance for the bees, especially if you live in a northern climate where it's possible that snow would possibly cover your bottom entrance at the front of the hive. It gives a higher entrance for them. And it also provides another opportunity for ventilation to move through the hive, air coming in the bottom and working its way out the top. Whether or not you use this upper entrance is entirely up to you. It does give the bees another place that they have to guard from robbers in the summer months. I'll mention one more thing about the inner cover, and that is you can use this inner cover as a place to feed your bees. You can take and fill this up with sugar water, 1-to-1 sugar water. Again, please subscribe to my channel and you'll find a video on how to make sugar water. Put little holes inside of your mason jar, and you can just simply put this over the slit that is in the middle of this inner cover and give bees access to the sugar water as a way to feed them. Now we wouldn't want to leave this exposed, and we certainly can't put the top cover on this with that jar there. So what we'll do is we'll take an empty super like this one with no frames inside of it, put it on top, and then put our cover over the top of that. And that allows only the bees that are in the bottom here to be able to access the sugar water that you've put on top. Okay, so now I've gone ahead and put my honey super back on here. So assuming we're having a great year, the bees draw out all the comb here, and it's filled up with baby bees, the brood. This is filled up with honey, or maybe a mixture of some brood and honey, and our inner cover here. And that leaves one last piece that goes on top, and this is our top cover. This particular one is called a telescoping top cover because it covers over the sides, which provides a lot of protection against rain, causing the rain to go over the outsides of the hive and not go into the hive at all. There are a couple different types of top covers, but for most beekeepers, this is the most popular type. This metal on top is very weather resistant and can last several years. Now that I've given you a tour of the beehive, let me answer a couple common questions that people have about beehives when they get a new kit like this. First of all, this particular kit is available from a lot of different beekeeping supply places. And honestly, it's my opinion, although I haven't really done the research to prove it, that this is a standard kit that comes from overseas. And different organizations will put their brand on the bottom of it. And I've bought them from several different people, but they all seem to be identical when I put them together. I can't find any differences between them. So I think that these are all mass produced overseas, and then people will burn their logo in the front of them. Actually, you can get your logo burned at the factory there. That doesn't mean it's not a good beekeeping kit. It's very common, and I bought a lot of these and I've been pleased with them. What these are is called a waxed dipped hive kit. That means the outside of this beehive has been coated in wax. And so these you do not need to paint if you get a waxed dipped hive kit like this. Now this wax doesn't last forever. My experience, 2 to 3 years, especially if it's in the sun, this wax is going to come off and you're going to be down to bare wood. And at that point, you're going to have to go ahead and paint your hive in order to protect it from the outside. Now, if you choose not to get a waxed dipped beehive and you're just getting bare wood, you are going to have to paint it. You only paint the outside of the hive that is exposed to the weather. You do not paint anything inside of the hive. You don't paint the inside of the supers, you don't paint the frames, you don't paint anything inside. The bees will take care of all of that, including propolising the inside of the hive, which is like a resin substance that they like to coat things with for protection. So you don't need to worry about that. You'll just paint the outside of their hive. And really any exterior house paint is just fine. Another common question that I have is this all that I need? And the answer is yes and no. For your first year, this might be all you need, but it also may not be enough. This is for me a base configuration. What I like to do is this. I like to let the queen have the bottom deep box on an 8 frame and the medium box for her whole brood nest, meaning that she can lay eggs here and here, and then the bees can fill up the outside frames with honey and pollen resources for themselves to use. Anything above this that I would add on because of the nectar flow season would be for honey production. And those supers that I put on for honey production are only going to stay on for a few weeks or maybe a couple of months at the very most, and then I'm going to take them off and extract the honey and reduce the beehive down to just these 2 boxes. So my base configuration is just this, and honey supers would be above. If you're having a good year and your bees fill up all of this, you may need another box or even 2 boxes your first year. So I highly recommend, if you're getting a base kit like this with 1 deep and 1 medium, that you purchase another deep or another medium so that you have enough room for your hive to expand. Because when you need it, you need it. I will say one other thing, and that is that these hive kits do come in different configurations, where you can get 1 deep and 2 mediums, or you can get 2 deeps, or you can get all mediums. The bees don't care. It's just totally up to you what you like to do. But if you're getting this kit, just be prepared that you're going to need to buy some more supers at some point, especially if your hive does really well this year, and we hope that it does. Another question that people sometimes ask is, what do I need to put the beehive on? And what I recommend is that you get the beehive off of the ground for a couple of reasons. We don't want water during a rainy day to get inside of the beehive. And at least in my area of the country, ants are a problem. And by lifting it off of the ground some, it will help prevent water from getting in your hive and ants from getting inside of your hive. But it also does something else. It makes it easier on your back. If you put your beehive on your ground, perhaps on just like a regular brick, you're going to be having to bend over to the ground all the time to inspect your hive. And if you have several hives, that can get old really quick. And so if you use a beehive stand, like this beehive stand, or if you put it on cinder blocks, for example, you can lift the hive up off the ground, reduce the ants, and make it a little bit easier on your back. If you have any other questions about Beehive, please leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to help you. And in addition, I should let you know 2 things. Number 1, I have a bee mentoring program where by video and by text, I will support you in your beekeeping adventure through your first year. You can sign up for it on my website at www.honeytopbees. Also, I have a beekeeping course that I have recorded for you, and if you are interested in purchasing that course, you can also find that on my website, and it will walk you through all the basics of beekeeping that you need to know as a foundation and everything that you need to know to get you through your first year. Thanks for watching today. God bless. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to my channel, I encourage you to do so today, and I'll see you next time on our new Beekeeper Beginning series.